so good afternoon, everybody. My name is Jesse, and I am with Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants. If you're joining us for the first time today, we are all about bringing conservation, adventure, and science into classrooms around the world. Now, this program marks the end of our day 2 of our Ingenious Plus Epic Kickoff Celebration. So all week long, we've been featuring innovators from coast to coast across Canada, highlighting the very diverse ways in which they are working to make Canada and the world a healthier, smarter, and kinder place. What I'm going to do is dive in with a little video highlighting what the Ingenious Plus campaign is all about before I turn it over to Jill at the Rideau Hall Foundation, who's going to explain in great detail how you guys can learn more and get involved. So without further ado, let's kick off that video and dive in with today's broadcast. How fun was that? Before I dive in with Jill, I just want to say I haven't had the chance to say this before with any of the videos in the Ingenious Plus series, but I'm so happy that kinder is an element that is focused on this. Healthier and smarter, I think we might have expected with a program focusing on innovation, but it's so important. Kindness and empathy are sort of in short supply, it seems, sometimes these days, but it's really important to highlight that, and there's so much that we can all do every day to be kind. Now, with that note, I'm going to turn it over to Jill to tell us a little bit more about what they're up to. Hey, Jill.
Hey, Jesse, thanks so much for having me. And thank you everybody who's joining. So we are so excited because yes, as Jesse says, this is day 2 of our launch of Ingenious Plus, Canada's Youth Innovation Prize. So it is brand spanking new. And if you are passionate about generating solutions for your community, your country, even globally, Ingenious Plus gives Canadian youth aged 14 to 18 the opportunity to innovate for good and to share strategies for making our world healthier, smarter, and as Jesse said, kinder. Everybody needs more kindness right now. And I think I totally agree with you, Jesse. It is such an important part that we can all contribute with kindness. So what is innovation? We hear this word getting tossed around a lot, and it's hard to kind of zero in on what it really means. But for us, innovation is simply doing something better and making an impact. So this includes improving on a product, on a service, or a process, and creating something new that solves a problem or simply just makes the world a better place. So often we can think that innovation is very technical, mathematical, scientific, and that's true. A lot of innovation is that, but it's also so much more. Innovation is social, it is community, it is entrepreneurial, it is health, it is solidarity. So you don't have to be a genius in engineering to be an innovator. You just have to want to improve the world around you. And no need to go it alone. Something that our innovators always stress is the importance of teamwork. So when you're applying to Ingenious Plus, which I hope you will, make sure you grab a friend, grab a classmate. A group of people will always make an idea stronger and better. So this award invites you to present your innovation ideas, and this is your chance to showcase your innovation to an exceptional network of Canada's most successful innovators, one of whom you'll be speaking to a little bit later today. You'll have the chance to win entry into this network and also the chance to win up to $10,000, which is pretty great. So tell us what you hope to solve in your community or beyond, and you can receive cash rewards and mentorship from leading Canadian innovators. So please check us out at ingeniusplus.ca, and the next great leading Canadian innovator could be you. Thanks, Jesse.
Thank you so much, Jill. And again, we put up the ingeniusplus.ca website on the bottom of the screen. I really encourage all our folks tuning in today live and after the fact to tune in and check out all of what they have to share and offer at the website. It's some fantastic stuff. Now, I can give the generic introduction right off the website for our speaker coming up today, Stuart McReynolds, but instead I just want to say that personally, this program and the lead up to it has been one of the most fun things I've been involved with in quite some time. Stu is one of the rare people that is as wildly passionate and enthusiastic about what he does as I am about what I do. It's a thrill to have anyone on who fits that bill, and especially in Stu's case, where his whole career and everything that he does as president and CEO of the Ability Center is meant to help people fulfill their potential, no matter what barriers they may face in doing so. So there can be no more noble goal than that, and no more noble job than that. And so I want to bring in Stu to tell us a little bit about the story of himself, the Ability Center, and all the great work that they do. Stu, thank you so much for joining us. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Jesse and Jill. It's an absolute pleasure to be here with everyone this afternoon. So as Jesse said, my name is Stuart McReynolds, and I'm the president and CEO at Ability Center. And before I get into talking a little bit about my role and the organization and the innovation that we're involved in at our organization, I'm just going to ask Jesse to play a quick video to really open up some thinking. And when you watch this video, I really want you to think about 3 key words: innovation, possibility, and potential. Over to you, Jesse.
Yes, I can, suddenly, yes, I can. Gee, I'm afraid to go on has turned into, yes, I can. Take a look, what do you see? 133 pounds of confidence, me. Got the feeling I can do anything, yes, I can. Something that sings in my blood is telling me, yes, I can. I was just born today, I can go all the way, yes, I can. 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 Hey, yes, I can.
No, you can't.
Yes, I can! Are you ready? I can climb Everest. Yes, I can. I can fight here all night and never rest. Yes, I can. I was just born today. I can go all the way. Yes! I can.
I'll stop.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Jesse. I'm just going to share a few slides with you today, and I'm very conscious that obviously no one wants to be to be presented to in just PowerPoint slides, but I've got a few just to really as placeholders, so I can give you some visual examples of what I'm speaking about as well as we go through the presentation. So just a few housekeeping things before I get started. Again, my name is Stuart McReynolds. You can probably tell that I've got a bit of an accent. And so I come from England, North London originally. I've had the fortune of living and working across the world. I've spent time in New Zealand, in Spain, and indeed in Canada. The other thing about my accent is I speak very quickly when I get very passionate about what I'm presenting. So, of course, accessibility and inclusion and innovation is something that I'm very passionate about. So I will try my best to slow down at times and make sure that I'm articulate in what I'm presenting. And so today, I want to talk a little bit about the organization that I work for, and in particular, innovation in accessibility and inclusion. So Ability Centre is quite a unique place in an organization. So we were founded and created out of the need to have a facility and a model where people of all ages and abilities can come together to realize their full potential. Because we know that in our communities, many people, and particularly people with disabilities, aren't always included. So a group of individuals came together around a kitchen table 20 years ago and wanted to create this model of inclusion and accessibility where everyone can come and participate, and which then could be replicated across the province, across the country, and even across the world. So what we believe in as an organization is a Canada where we all belong. And what we mean by that is that there are no barriers for individuals to get a job, to play at the local sports club, to develop friendships and relationships with their peers. And so what we work on with our community is removing barriers to full participation in our communities. So what we do as an organization is that we run a number of different sport and recreation programs, employment programs. We do a lot of research, and we have a lot of fun on a day-to-day basis. And we're really, really lucky because we have a 125,000 square foot facility that is fully accessible. And in fact, we were voted as one of the most accessible facilities in the world back in 2013. And we've been fortunate enough to have athletes such as Onde de Grasse training out of our facility, the Canadian senior wheelchair basketball teams, among many, many others as well. So just a quick question for each of you in the audience today, and that is, what is accessibility and inclusion? So I just really want you to think about that for a couple of seconds in terms of what does that mean to you as an individual? What does it mean to you as a family, as a community, as a school? And I think one of the things that you'll really start to think about is that it means different things for different people. But what it actually comes down to is the fact that everyone should be provided with equitable opportunities in life to live, work, and play, to realize their full potential, and to feel a sense of belonging and purpose in their communities. So to demonstrate this diversity and accessibility, inclusion, action, I would like to issue you a quick challenge where you're seated or where you're standing, and that is using any part of your body, draw or write the letter T. So if you just want to give that a go wherever you're listening in from today, have a go at making that letter T, and I'll give you a few seconds to do that.
We have Jill and I on screen doing this with you, so I don't know if you can see us, Stu, but I got my whole arm. She's got her finger with the tea. We also had the cup of tea come in for the play. So if you're tuning in home, please do play along. I'd love to see what people do with this. If you stand or if you're sitting or how you want to do it, lots of options here.
Brilliant, excellent. Now, I can't see at the moment, Jesse, but your description of Jill carrying that cup of tea is a great example of innovation and action. And so I think what I wanted to gather from this is as you look around your classroom or home or wherever you're tuning in from, you'll notice not everyone does the same tea. Some people might be using fingers, people might be using their eyes, some people might be holding up a cup of tea. And what that really shows is that we all are diverse, so that we have diversity in thought, diversity in approach. And that's something that's really good because that is what really generates and breeds and stimulates innovation. Could you imagine if we all did the same thing, if we all approach the same task, the same issue, the same problem, the same way? What a boring world we would all live in. So let's embrace that diversity and let's really think about innovation as different approaches to solving common problems and issues. So what does innovation look like in accessibility? And on the screen, you'll see I've got one diagram and picture on the left-hand side, which is the Hey Siri with the symbol. And on the right-hand side, there is an image of a squeezy tomato ketchup bottle. And so what I want to describe here is innovation in action. And in particular, how innovation has served our disability community as well. So when you think about Hey Siri, I know many of you listening in today will have a smartphone and either use Amazon's Alexa or Hey Siri. So Siri, as accessibility innovation, has significantly enhanced the ability for people with disabilities to use a cell phone, to engage with their employees, to engage with their families. If you could imagine someone who's potentially got a visual impairment trying to navigate a cell phone without that device, it becomes very difficult. But what's really cool about Siri is that it isn't just for people with disabilities. It isn't just for people that may not be able to use a phone as others might use that phone, but it actually enhances the experience for everyone that uses that piece of software on that device. Similarly, when you look at the squeezy tomato ketchup bottle, and I'm going to let you into a couple of secrets here. Back in the 1960s, 70s, there was a big research study undertaken by Heinz Ketchup. And I think everyone on the line might know and be aware of Heinz as the preeminent tomato ketchup provider, and certainly mine and my family's favoured provider of ketchup. And what they found out was that 5-year-olds at that time consumed 60% more ketchup than 40-year-olds. So when you think about the people using that product, when it was in glass bottles, not really great for 5-year-olds to be swinging around glass bottles and trying to get their ketchup up. So they looked at what types of users use that ketchup bottle, and they actually designed that squeezy bottle not only for 5-year-olds, but for also to ensure that anyone would have a better opportunity to use that bottle. And certainly in our community, serving people with disabilities, that is a game changer in terms of having a bottle or having a product that is more suited to your needs. So again, not just for people with disabilities, but a really good design principle in terms of a squeezy bottle. And that is simply just good innovation, good business sense, and serves a need that wasn't being met during a time. And certainly from an innovation and entrepreneurship lens for Heinz, probably made them a lot more money as well, because more people were then buying their product. Now, I am going to let you into a secret tip for those of you who do have the glass bottles at home. If you look at your glass bottle of Heinz ketchup, you'll notice the number 57 that's etched in on that glass bottle. Now, that 57, number 57, is in a really strategic place, because that is the sweet spot when you've turned your bottle upside down and you're trying to get those last little bits of ketchup up. If you tap that 57, that's the sweet spot to get that ketchup out. So hopefully if you walk away from anything from my presentation is knowing how to get some more ketchup out of the bottle when you're really struggling, like I often do. So when it comes to innovation at Ability Centre, this is something that we're really proud of, and we really challenge ourselves and each other every single day to see how we can apply innovative solutions to improve the outcomes for the people that we serve. And we really, really embrace the importance of accessibility and inclusion for everyone in our community. So on the slide that you'll see that I'm presenting right now, there's 3 separate images. On the left-hand side, you've got equality. In that image, you've got 3 individuals of different heights, really, standing on a box, trying to look at a rugby game that is happening over a fence. And the individual on the far right-hand side is on the box, but they're short and they cannot see over the fence. So their view is completely limited. The individual in the middle is slightly taller, but again, can only just see over the fence. And the individual on the left-hand side can see over the fence, has got a pretty good view. And that's equality in the sense that everyone's got the same tool, the same box to view the game, but it's not really meeting the needs of everyone in that picture. In the middle, you've got what is known as equity. So the individual on the far right side has now got 2 boxes, which has given them a pretty good sight line. They can now see the game, which is great. It meets that need. And the person in the middle is the same because they've still got their sight line. That's okay. And the individual on the left-hand side has the same sight line. So everyone is viewing that rugby game now at the same sight line, at the same height, and everyone's got an okay view. Now, what we want to focus on as an organization, and what we challenge others to do as well, is why don't you just get rid of that barrier? Just get rid of that fence and make sure everyone's got a full opportunity to view that game. But what's important for us as Ability Centre is we need to go one step further. And as a society, it's not just about standing on the sidelines. It's actually getting involved in the game itself. So what we've done at the organization is really challenge ourselves to embrace that concept of inclusion and accessibility, and how can we get people off the sidelines and into programs and services that they're incredibly passionate about. And one of the programs in particular is mixed ability sport. And this is a great example of how innovation can be applied in a specific context like sport and recreation. So what we've done is we've worked with a number of different organizations, including rugby. Now, when you think about rugby, or if you go on YouTube and you Google rugby, you'll see a highlight reel of people crashing and bashing and smashing each other. And the first thing you think about is that is sport is designed for a certain type of person. There's no way I can see myself in that game. So when you look at it from that perspective, it's quite segregated. It excludes a lot of individuals that maybe wanted to get involved at the local club or play that sport, but they can't take full contact, or there is something about the game that doesn't quite meet their need. So what we've done is we've worked with a number of different sports organizations, including Rugby Ontario and Ontario and local clubs, to sit down with the rugby clubs, but more importantly, people with lived experience, people with disabilities, people that are facing barriers to access that sport. And we've created variations that enable individuals to then join their local club to play that game they've never been able to play before and experience the impacts that are transforming their lives. So developing friendships, getting contacts for potential employment, being part of a team for the first time in their lives. And that's something that's really incredibly important to us, is that an individual gets that sense of belonging in whatever it is they choose to do. And so when you think about back to the tea activity that we did as a group earlier on, think about the multitude of different variations that people did their tea. And if you think about that concept and applying it to hockey, to soccer, to rugby, that's what mixed ability is about. And that's where that innovation can really, really live and breathe. And we've seen it in mainstream sport with the Paralympics and Special Olympics and Olympic stream sport. But we really need to try and cement this philosophy of mixed ability sport and variations and inclusion accessibility across every single community club out there. And that's certainly our ambition as an organization. So along our journey of launching mixed ability sport and applying this innovation, and I think one thing that is incredibly important about innovation and entrepreneurship and finding new ways to design new products and launch new programs is that you've got to be prepared to fail at times. And certainly we found a lot of things that worked really well for us, and we found things that didn't work for us. And that's okay, because when you think about inclusion and accessibility, it's a journey. If we commit to that journey, if we commit to learning, if we commit to improving and learning from when we fail, that's what's most important. And so if we embrace that concept of a journey, that we're never really going to kind of be there, it's going to be constantly about improving. That's what innovation is about, always trying to find different ways to be better in what we do. So what we found worked with mixed ability sport and in generally in the work that we've done at our organization is that co-design and working with experts by lived experience is fundamental to success. And what we mean by experts with lived experience are the people that we want to include in the program. So for us, we work a lot with people with disabilities. And so it's no good for me designing a program for someone with a disability that I don't have, because I don't have that lived experience. I really don't know what's going to work. So it's got to be a collaborative effort where every stakeholder that's going to be impacted by a program or a product needs to be around that table from the outset in the design process. And that's something that's very, very important for us. The other piece as well is that concept of variations. So we try and move away from the adaptation, in that you've got a game of rugby, for example, you've got adaptation A, adaptation B, adaptations, lots of different types of that sport. Well, can we not just look at the sport or a game of rugby and actually embed variations of how to play that game in that game? And so for us, it's really trying to embrace the concept that variations aren't just for a person with a disability. They aren't just for one type of demographic in our community. Variations can support participation and positive experiences for everyone. And I think that's what's really cool when you think about accessibility and innovation. It's not just benefiting one group of our community, it's benefiting the whole community. So what hasn't worked for us is when we've missed those steps, when we haven't had every key individual around the table in that first instance. So when you have that situation, you get really excited about launching a program, and you figure out it doesn't actually work for the people it's intended to work for. And so that's one of our big learnings, is making sure you take the time at the start to build those relationships and to make sure everyone that's going to be impacted by that program is part of that process. The other piece as well, and I believe that some of our greatest innovators in Canada and entrepreneurs have experienced this, it sometimes takes time to change people's minds. And I think what innovation is about, as much as it is thinking of all these cool ideas, it's about grit and persistence and perseverance. It's about believing in something. So when someone tells you that it's impossible, that you tell them it's not, and more so you demonstrate how it isn't impossible and the value that what you're presenting has significant value, and you convince them through the impact versus a few slides that you present to them. And when it does work, when the innovation does work, when mixability sport works, when a product that has that variation design does work, the impact can be massive and can literally change people's lives. So I want to finish off the presentation today before I turn it over for a question and answer. And I want to just confirm to everyone, it is a safe space here. Certainly, if the questions are coming from a place of respect, I will certainly answer those. So be really welcoming any questions and challenging me in my approach and what I do. And hopefully I can learn a lot from each of you today as well. But when it comes down to closing us off and the challenge that I present, it's based on the fact that our youth of today, all of you that are tuning in, are our leaders of tomorrow. You have an opportunity to shape what the future looks like and to create a society and a world that people can't even imagine to think about today. I challenge you as you embark on your own individual journeys and careers to leave no one behind. Not think of accessibility and inclusion as a charity or a nice to have, but as a competitive advantage, a force for good, and tools that can transform our country for the better and for all of us. When we look back 20, 50, 100 years ago, we can see how far innovation and accessibility has come. But we still have a long way to go. There are still too many individuals in our communities that remain excluded. And we need you to carry the torch to create future societies that will blow our minds. And it will also, and more importantly, leave no one behind in that process. And what I've got on the screen in front of you now is a visual picture of the great Nelson Mandela, and a famous quote that I try to live by, and I often use in my presentations, and it reads, "It always seems impossible until it's done." And so my challenge to you is to go out and do the impossible. And while you're doing it, make sure you do so through the lens of inclusion and accessibility. And again, make sure you leave no one behind and have fun while you're doing it. So I'm happy to leave my slides there, Jesse, and I'll be delighted to have a conversation or answer any questions that the groups in attendance today may have.
Stu, that was fantastic. Professional attachment out the window. That was a marvelous presentation in every possible way. We're going to dive in with questions. I wanted to highlight too, for any student tuning in again live or after the fact, one of the things that I think is really important that we highlight in a lot of our broadcasts is thinking about examples in your own life. And as you were talking about all this, two that really jumped to mind for me. So my aunt has Down syndrome. I grew up with her. I lived with her for many, many years. She's many years older than me. And when a TV's on, she's sort of looking around, doing all sorts of stuff. And there was a story about a person with Down syndrome that had run a marathon. And her attention was on that, like lickety split, until it went off the screen. It's just such a special opportunity to see her be like, wow, that's very cool. So that was one. And back when I was 22, I climbed Mount Kilimanjaro, and I was with a bunch of people that are a little younger, older than me, and we were all going up together. And I got talking to my guide, and my guide, the week before I went, had taken up a blind man up Kilimanjaro and guided him and been with him the entire time. And to conceive that that was even possible, back when I was 22 and even to this day, is astonishing. And it's a testament to what's possible if you, again, don't think it's impossible. There's a lot that you can do. So I really appreciate that quote as well. I'm going to head to Jill in a minute for a question, but I wanted to highlight just as a beginning, for people that want to come in person to the Ability Center. I don't think we touched upon this. Where are you located physically?
Yeah, great. Thank you, Jess. So we're located in Whitby, Ontario. So we'd be delighted to host any of the students or teachers in attendance today. Also, a quick shout out to our programs and services team. We do a lot of school field trips, both online and in person. So if you'd like to learn any more information about the field trips that we provide or come to visit for a tour of the facility, if you visit our website at www.abilitycenter.org, you'll be able to find some more information, and I'll be delighted to assist in setting that up as well.
Outstanding. Thanks, Stu. I will turn it over to Jill, who is as enamored with the program as I was. So if you want to lead in with a question, come on in.
Thanks. Thank you so much, Stu. That was so great. And wow, that video that you kicked us off with was just so incredible. I'm still thinking about it, and we'll be thinking about it, for days to come. And, Jesse kind of kicked us off with this, but, what have been some of your really great moments of seeing your innovation, seeing your work in action, and the impact that it's made? Can you share with us kind of your highlight reel of your greatest moments of your work?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's I've been very, very fortunate throughout my career because I've been involved in this work for 10, 15 years, and at Ability Center I've been there for 6 years. And I think what's I'm most proud about isn't necessarily the program or service. It's about the environment that we're creating and what we've created. And I'll give you a great example, and it goes back to the Mixability Initiative and Mixability Rugby, in fact. And part of the intent behind Mixability, and as I alluded to in my presentation, it's about creating a community. It's not about someone going to a local rugby club and playing sport for an hour. It's about developing friendships and developing relationships and making connections and feeling that sense of belonging to something in your community. And I recall when I was walking back to the center late at night, I think I'd been in Toronto for work meetings during the day, and I walked past the Boston Pizza, and we had about 70 or 80 individuals with disabilities, members of the local rugby club, members of staff, all just in a big bubble socializing, having drinks, eating pizza, having snack food. And it was, this is what it's about. This has been generated from that program, getting people to trust each other. Now you've got this group of individuals who traditionally would have never socialized with one another, all out at a Boston Pizza, having fun together. And then you've got that whole social inclusion piece. So that for me was a very, very, very proud moment. Another proud moment when I think about some of the work that we've done at Ability Center is we have an Academy for Student Athlete Development program. We've had Olympians come out of that, and that program is the first academy in the world that integrates student athletes that have the potential to be high performance in their sport in Olympic and mainstream pathways, parasport and Paralympic pathways, and Special Olympic pathways. So in the classroom environment at the center, you've got a future NHL prospect sitting next to one of our Special Olympic skaters. And that environment where you see those students high-fiving themselves down the corridor, and the students without disabilities actually valuing their peers and developing genuine friendships, that's what's going to change society for the better in terms of inclusion, because then you're going to have these superstars, NHL players, NFL players, Olympians on the big screen in 10, 15 years time, talking about their experiences in high school. And what message are they going to be saying? It's going to be about one of inclusion. And so that's incredibly satisfying for me to kind of see that interaction. And the last one that I'll touch base on is that we do a lot of employment programs. And one of the aspects we've been focusing on is entrepreneurship. And we had a participant a couple of years ago, before we had to shut down during the pandemic, who was doing our pre-employment training programs, and actually then had a stall at one of our Christmas festivals where she sold her baked goods. And I've got to tell you, they tasted better than any of the local shops and bakeries in town. And it was just fabulous to see this individual that had an idea, that was able to develop their skills from a business sense and customer service sense, then put that in practice, actually selling products. And it was a really good product at the end of the day. So I'm just blessed and very fortunate to work with an incredible staff, incredible participants, where I'm in a facility that's surrounded by this work happening day in, day out.
You're a very compelling man, Stu. I think I'm probably with Jill that all of us would drop everything and join you. So you talked at the beginning of your program about your experiences going around the world doing some of this work and having worked around the globe. Is there a place where accessibility is done best, where it's just a part of the culture, it's a part of what they do. You certainly seem to be bringing this to Canada in a really meaningful way, so perhaps we're the world leader in it, but I'm curious what your experiences have been.
Yeah, that's a really great question. And I would say no country is the best. There is such a long way to go in terms of improving accessibility globally. But I would say there are some really cool emerging promising practices that are happening in different countries. But what's really cool is the culture and how culture impacts accessibility. And that's something that we've really tried to focus on as an organization, is that a person with a disability isn't just a person with disability. They come from different backgrounds, different cultures, different religions, and that intersectionality is something that we all need to be thinking about. But I would say in Canada, our strength is our attitude, in that we're a bit more open in terms of being more open to change, to being more inclusive. Whereas I would say in a country like the UK, that attitude, because the UK is ancient, like it's millions of years old, far older than what Canada is. But the mindset and the attitudes are a bit more difficult to change. But there's far more investments, there's far more tools, there's far more resources, there's far more products than we've got in Canada. So it's really interesting in terms of, who's doing it well. Certainly Canada's is bringing in more legislation and law to help out. But what's really key is making sure that countries and governments and us and society value one another and value the contributions that each of us can bring. And it can't just rely on the law or legislation telling people that they have to be more inclusive and accessible. We have to create environments where everyone comes together, where we get to know about each other, that we celebrate the differences we all bring to the table, and more importantly, value the contributions that we can all bring if those barriers in our communities are removed.
So you spoke a lot about the cultural aspect and why it's so important and everything you're trying to embody and imbue at the Ability Center. In terms of tangible accessibility aids, I guess, in society, when I was a kid, there were very few wheelchair ramps. This was just not something that was done. When they were done, they were usually done poorly. They were too steep, put in. It was a piece of plywood that you put over some stairs. Not very good. Now, I mean, there's still a long way to go, and a lot of organizations really ought to be stepping up and doing this, but you can see these in a lot of places all around Toronto, where I grew up, all around Canada, where I've been. What's the next big challenge? Is there something that as a society, there is a sort of systemic issue in terms of accessibility that we're not thinking about, that maybe you know about with your experience with those communities?
Yeah, that's another great one. And one exciting area that's emerging is a whole concept of accessible technology and the tech sector. We keep talking about artificial intelligence. We talk about autonomous vehicles. And I would say, and certainly when you think about the Ingenious Plus initiative, really think about accessibility as a huge untapped market with massive potential. I'll give you an example. When you think about technology in autonomous vehicles, so vehicles that can drive themselves, there's around a quarter of the population minimum that in Canada that have identified as having a disability. Now, I've had the fortune of talking to autonomous vehicle providers. You think about the Teslas of the world, you think about universities that are building that technology. And I've asked the same question to each provider. Have you consulted with the disability community? Understanding that they could be potentially one of the biggest consumer segments for your product, knowing that traditionally they've not been in a position where they've been able to actually purchase a car or drive a car. The answer has always been no. So they're missing out potentially on 25% of the population, not only in terms of driving their business, but meeting a really unmet need to support transportation for people with disabilities. So I would say a couple of things in response to that: the emergence of the tech sector and looking at technology and trying to think about how do you embed accessibility into existing technology initiatives. So don't just isolate an accessibility product or tool. Think about how we can embed accessibility in all technology and improve outcomes for everyone. And then also, when you think about accessibility, and believe me, I've seen some really, really cool looking prototypes. I've seen these tank looking wheelchairs that walk upstairs, and that's really cool to look at. But is that what's really needed? And I think that's where we got to consult with people with experience, because the case of that could be that rather than building 3 flights of stairs, build a ramp for the same cost. Rather than designing these fabulous robotic wheelchairs and those pieces, can you invent that multi-million dollars to making a full community accessible, with wider doors, with push buttons that not only enhances accessibility for people with disabilities, but improves experiences for everyone in that community. So I would say, again, what that innovation comes down to in specific accessibility, that key piece has to be designing that innovation and those experiences and those products with the individuals with that lived experience to make sure it's going to be successful.
I'm really, really happy you mentioned that. I think when so many, I mean, we talked about this at the beginning and in Jill's introduction too, but when people think innovation, they think flashy tech. So where everyone's mind goes. We've heard in conservation programs that we do, you know, clean up the ocean, send out these amazing trawlers and get out all that plastic. And it's like for 1/1000th the cost, you could just prevent the plastic from getting to the ocean. Maybe start with that, and that's a more accessible and sustainable solution in general. And so I think that that's a really important point. Stu, we could talk all day. I have two more questions I really want to get to before we have to wrap up our live broadcast today. And the first is there a personal story that led you into this field? Like, what was the driver for you to end up where you are today? I'm personally curious. And I think
that's you know what, that's a great question, and I get asked that a lot. So for me, I grew up around disability, but I never saw myself having a career in this sector. I very naturally fell into it. So when I started my career, I wanted to be a teacher. And at the time, the only jobs that were available to me was special education. So I had the choice in New Zealand to work in a fabulous school in a special education department, which wasn't really my passion at the time. My passion was rugby and sport and physical education. But I thought, okay, well, let me get my foot in the door. I'll teach in special education, build some tenure, and then I'll be able to go and do what I really want to do. And quite frankly, after literally the first couple of weeks, I felt that I found my place in life, in my career. I worked with some fabulous students, some brilliant students who I grew very attached to for a number of reasons. Number one, that their character and their potential and their perseverance just inspired me. But also what inspired me more was just the barriers that they faced. And these were simple barriers. These were simple barriers about them not being able to join a mainstream phys ed class. There were barriers about not being able to join a program in their community. There were barriers about people's limiting assumptions about what they could do without even meeting them. And so for me, that really stimulated a fire in me in terms of committing my career to working with individuals with disabilities and really trying to focus on removing those barriers. And then personally, I've been diagnosed with ADHD, and the greatest way I can describe that is that my brain and mind is like a Ferrari, but with bicycle brakes. And so certainly I can empathize with individuals who face daily struggles. My struggle is that I can't turn my mind off, which is really, really cool at times when you're trying to fix problems and solutions. But it's not great when you need to kind of switch off at the end of the day either. And I found that analogy really cool in terms of, you know, having a mind racing like a Ferrari, but then having bicycle brakes to slow it down, which isn't great. So again, I think that personal lived experience and just my experience working with individuals with disabilities and seeing the barriers, and I don't look at the barriers as necessarily always negative, Jesse. I see the barriers as potential. And if you think there are multiple barriers in our society, well, then there's got to be multiple potential to make better outcomes for everyone in our communities as well.
Outstanding. What a great story. Stu, I wanted to wrap up, and this has been imbued throughout your entire program today. For students watching, how can they leave this program and start incorporating the sort of attitude and culture of inclusivity and accessibility into their own lives? Maybe they aren't innovating just yet. Maybe they're inspired to do so now. But if they leave this session, what can they do that would really have a big positive impact?
Well, I think start with the small things. And I think when you're thinking about these ideas, bounce ideas off one another, but don't just bounce ideas off the person sat next to your friend group. Reach out to a diverse group of friends or peers or people you might not even spoken to, because that diversity and approach or thought in collaboration is really what is going to set your products or your idea apart. So if I've got one piece of advice, make sure that you work with individuals with lived experience in terms of designing the products that you're designing to try and benefit them. That is absolutely critical. And really think about that accessibility and inclusion piece, not in terms of just including people in what you're doing, but as that competitive advantage when you launch your idea or product into the marketplace, because other people aren't doing it. So if you can embrace that, you've got a competitive advantage straight from the outset.
Outstanding. What a fun program. I wish we could go all day, but that marks the end of our official live broadcast. I really do encourage everyone to head to your website, www.abilitycenter.org. You can find out how to go in person, arrange tours insofar as much of that as possible during COVID. I know it's still a lot for all our speakers joining us for the Ingenious Plus series. But just amazing work that you guys are up to, and I hope everyone takes the opportunity to learn more after this broadcast and have those conversations that Stu mentioned in their own lives or classrooms or wherever you might be joining from today. Again, if everyone wants to learn more about Ingenious Plus as the underpinner of this entire series, check out ingeniusplus.ca. Some really cool stuff there. And I hope many of you will take this opportunity to think about these ideas when you're submitting your own innovations in the months to come. Stu, I want to bring in Jill to join me in saying a big thank you and farewell for joining us today. We really appreciate it.